The emergency coordination meeting at the FBI's Strategic Information and Operations Center had been activated with threat-level red protocols at 4:30 a.m. on Saturday morning, as federal law enforcement officials from across the nation rushed to the secure facility in Washington, D.C. to receive what FBI Director Christopher Wray had described as the most urgent terrorism threat briefing in the Bureau's modern history. The Crisis Command Center, designed to coordinate responses to nationwide terrorist threats, now hosted the largest gathering of American counter-terrorism leadership ever assembled to address Attorney General Pam Bondi's shocking discovery of active Iranian terror links operating within America's major metropolitan areas. FBI Director Wray sat at the head of the secure conference table, flanked by Deputy Director Paula Bate, Assistant Director of the Counterterrorism Division Timothy Langan, and Assistant Director of the Criminal Investigative Division Calvin Shivers, while the room filled with special agents in charge from New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Houston, Phoenix, Philadelphia, San Antonio, San Diego, Dallas, San Jose, Austin, and Miami, the 12 largest metropolitan areas in the United States. Facing them were Attorney General Bondi, Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, CIA Director William Burns, and Director of the National Counterterrorism Center, Christy Abizade, the most senior officials responsible for preventing terrorist attacks within the United States, assembled to brief FBI leadership on a threat that had fundamentally altered their understanding of Iranian terrorist capabilities on American soil. Director Wray, distinguished special agents in charge, Attorney General Bondi began, her voice carrying the urgency of intelligence discoveries that had revealed Iranian terrorist networks operating within America's largest cities with immediate capability to execute mass casualty attacks. I have requested this emergency counter-terrorism briefing because we have discovered active Iranian terror links operating within every major American metropolitan area, representing the most extensive and immediate terrorist threat to American civilians ever identified within our borders. She activated the FBI's advanced threat tracking systems, revealing real-time intelligence analysis that painted a terrifying picture of Iranian terrorist networks that had established operational capabilities within America's 12 largest cities, with additional cells identified in secondary metropolitan areas across the continental United States. The main display showed a comprehensive terrorist threat matrix overlaying Iranian terror cell locations, weapons caches, target assignments, and attack timelines against population density maps of America's major urban centers. What makes this terrorist threat unprecedented in American counterterrorism operations is not just its geographic scope, but its operational sophistication and immediate attack capability, Bondi continued, pointing to specific threat indicators displayed across the urban terrorism visualization. Iranian terrorist operatives have not simply been planning potential attacks, they have established fully operational terror cells within American cities with acquired weapons, explosives, and detailed attack plans targeting civilian populations, government facilities, and critical infrastructure. FBI Director Wray studied the threat matrix with the experience of someone who had spent his career preventing terrorist attacks against American targets. Madam Attorney General, when you say every major American metropolitan area, are you telling us that Iranian terrorist cells have achieved operational capability in all of America's largest cities simultaneously? Director Wray, that's exactly what our investigation has revealed. Iranian terrorist operatives have established active terror cells with immediate attack capability in New York City, Los Angeles, Chicago, Houston, Phoenix, Philadelphia, San Antonio, San Diego, Dallas, San Jose, Austin, Miami, and at least 15 additional metropolitan areas, with populations exceeding 500,000 people. She clicked to the next section of the briefing, revealing detailed operational analysis of Iranian terror cell capabilities within each major American city. Unlike traditional terrorist organizations that focus on specific geographic regions or symbolic targets, Iranian terror cells have been systematically positioned to execute coordinated mass casualty attacks across multiple American cities simultaneously, designed to create maximum psychological impact and social disruption. The implications sent a chill through the room filled with America's most experienced counterterrorism professionals. Special Agent in charge of the New York field office, Michael Driscoll had spent decades investigating terrorist threats against New York City, but had never encountered evidence of such comprehensive terrorist positioning within American urban centers. Madam Attorney General, what kind of attack capabilities do these Iranian terror cells possess? Are we looking at conventional explosives, chemical weapons, or other mass casualty methodologies? Special Agent Driscoll, our analysis indicates that Iranian terror cells have acquired military-grade explosives, automatic weapons, and what intelligence analysts believe may be chemical warfare agents specifically designed to maximize casualties in densely populated urban environments. She moved to a classified section of the briefing that revealed intercepted Iranian communications and technical analysis documenting terror cell weapons acquisitions and attack planning. For example, the Iranian terror cell operating in New York City has acquired over 200 pounds of military-grade plastic explosives, multiple automatic weapons, and sophisticated timing devices that could be used to execute coordinated attacks against subway systems, financial centers, government buildings, and other high-density civilian targets. Assistant Director of Counter-Terrorism, Langan leaned forward, studying the weapons analysis with growing alarm. Madam Attorney General, if Iranian terror cells have acquired military-grade explosives and automatic weapons in quantities you're describing, they have the capability to execute attacks that could cause casualties comparable to or exceeding the September 11th attacks. Assistant Director Langan, that appears to be exactly what Iranian terror cells have been preparing to accomplish. Our intelligence analysis indicates they have been systematically planning coordinated attacks designed to cause maximum civilian casualties while simultaneously targeting critical infrastructure to create cascading effects that would paralyze American urban centers. She displayed advanced attack modeling analysis that showed how Iranian terror cells could potentially execute coordinated attacks that would overwhelm emergency response capabilities while creating widespread panic and social disruption. Iranian terror cells appear to understand that coordinated attacks across multiple cities would stretch American emergency response resources beyond their capability to effectively respond, maximizing both the immediate casualty impact and the long-term psychological and economic damage. CIA Director Burns had been analyzing intelligence related to Iranian terrorist training and coordination operations. Madam Attorney General, our intelligence indicates that Iranian terror cells are receiving real-time operational guidance from Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps Quds Force terrorist specialists. Are we dealing with Iranian terror cells that are being directly controlled by Iranian military authorities? Director Burns, that's exactly what our analysis indicates. Iranian terror cells operating within American cities have been receiving detailed operational instructions, target assignments, and attack timing coordination directly from Revolutionary Guard Corps terrorist operations centers in Tehran. The revelation that Iranian terror cells were under direct military command and control from Tehran represented an act of war that demanded immediate military response from the highest levels of American government. She activated another section of the briefing showing intercepted communications between Iranian terror cells and Revolutionary Guard Corps command authorities. We have communications intercepts showing Iranian military commanders providing specific instructions to terror cells about target selection, attack timing, and coordination between cells in different cities to maximize the psychological and strategic impact of terrorist attacks. Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas had been analyzing the Homeland Security implications of coordinated Iranian terrorist attacks across multiple American cities. Madam Attorney General, what's our assessment of the timeline for potential Iranian terrorist attacks? Are we looking at imminent threats, or do we have time to develop comprehensive prevention strategies? Secretary Mayorkas, based on our latest intelligence intercepts and behavioral analysis, Iranian terror cells have received preliminary attack authorization and are preparing for coordinated operations within the next 24 to 48 hours. Our communications intercepts suggest they are in final preparation phases for what Iranian commanders are calling Operation Urban Strike. The room fell silent as the implications of imminent Iranian terrorist attacks across multiple American cities sank in. The assembled counterterrorism professionals represented decades of combined experience in preventing terrorist attacks and each understood the devastating potential of coordinated urban terrorism executed by well-equipped and trained foreign terror cells. Special agent in charge of the Los Angeles field office, Donald Alway, had been studying intelligence reports about Iranian terror cell activities on the West Coast. Madam Attorney General, what kind of targets have Iranian terror cells been surveilling in major American cities? Are we looking at government facilities, civilian populations, or critical infrastructure? Special Agent Alway, Iranian terror cells have been conducting systematic surveillance and attack planning against all three target categories simultaneously. They appear to be planning coordinated attacks that would target civilian populations in high-density areas, while simultaneously attacking government facilities and critical infrastructure to maximize both casualties and strategic impact. She revealed specific examples of Iranian terror cell targeting that demonstrated the comprehensive nature of their attack planning. In Los Angeles, Iranian terror cells have conducted detailed surveillance of Los Angeles International Airport, the Port of Long Beach, downtown financial centers, major shopping centers, and government buildings. They appear to be planning coordinated attacks that would target multiple facilities simultaneously. She continued with additional examples that painted an alarming picture of Iranian terrorist preparation across American cities. In Chicago, Iranian terror cells have surveilled the Chicago Transit Authority system, O'Hare International Airport, the Willis Tower, and major sporting venues. In Houston, they have focused on the Port of Houston, NASA Johnson Space Center, and the city's petrochemical infrastructure. Each target represented the potential for mass casualties and strategic disruption that could fundamentally alter American society and economic activity. Special agent in charge of the Miami field office, Jeffrey Veltri, had been analyzing Iranian terror cell activities in South Florida. Madam Attorney General, what's our assessment of Iranian terror cell coordination with other terrorist organizations or criminal networks? Are they operating independently or in conjunction with other hostile actors? Special Agent Veltri, that's where this threat becomes even more concerning. We have identified coordination between Iranian terror cells and networks linked to Hezbollah, Palestinian terrorist organizations, and various international criminal syndicates that have provided weapons, logistical support, and operational assistance. The possibility of coordinated terrorist operations involving multiple hostile organizations using Iranian terror cells as a foundation represented a nightmare scenario for American counterterrorism professionals. She displayed intelligence analysis showing Iranian terror cell coordination with international terrorist and criminal networks. Iranian terror cells appear to be serving as a coordination mechanism for what counter-terrorism analysts are calling a multi-organizational terrorist consortium that allows various hostile actors to pool resources and coordinate attacks for maximum impact against American targets. National Counter-Terrorism Center Director Abizaid had been coordinating with international intelligence partners to assess the global implications of Iranian terrorist operations. Madam Attorney General, what's our assessment of similar Iranian terror cell activities in other countries? Are we dealing with Iranian terrorist operations that are specific to the United States or part of a broader international campaign? Director Abizaid, we have intelligence suggesting that Iran has established similar terror cell networks in European countries, Canada, Australia, and other nations allied with the United States. The Iranian terrorist operations appear to be part of a coordinated international campaign designed to simultaneously attack Western interests globally. The revelation that Iranian terrorist operations within the United States were part of a broader international campaign represented a strategic threat that could fundamentally alter global security and the international balance of power. She revealed intercepted communications showing Iranian coordination of terrorist operations across multiple countries. We have communications intercepts indicating that Iranian terror cells in the United States are coordinating their attack timing with similar cells in London, Paris, Toronto, and other major cities in allied countries to maximize the global psychological impact of coordinated terrorist attacks. The briefing continued for another 6 hours as counter-terrorism officials analyzed every aspect of Iranian terror cell operations and developed comprehensive prevention strategies. Each revelation painted an increasingly alarming picture of Iranian terrorist capabilities that could cause mass casualties and fundamentally disrupt American society. FBI Director Wray outlined the law enforcement response to Iranian terror cell threats. We are implementing Operation City Shield, the most extensive urban counter-terrorism operation in American history. We will execute simultaneous operations against all identified Iranian terror cells while implementing enhanced security protocols for major metropolitan areas and potential target facilities. The operation would require unprecedented coordination between federal agencies, state and local law enforcement, military assets, and emergency response organizations. Phase 1 involves immediate surveillance and tactical assessment of all identified Iranian terror cells. Phase 2 implements enhanced security protocols for potential target facilities and high-density civilian areas. Phase 3 executes simultaneous arrests and neutralization operations against Iranian terror cells before they can execute their planned attacks. Special Agent in charge of the Chicago Field Office, Jody Cohen, addressed the logistical challenges of coordinating counter-terrorism operations across multiple major cities simultaneously. Director Wray, an operation targeting active terror cells in 12 major metropolitan areas, will require resources and coordination on a scale we've never attempted. Are we confident we can execute simultaneous operations without compromising operational security or allowing any terror cells to execute attacks during our operations? Special Agent Cohen, we have no choice but to execute this operation with absolute precision and overwhelming force. If we allow Iranian terror cells to execute their planned coordinated attacks, we could be looking at casualties and damage that exceeds anything in American history. As the counter-terrorism briefing concluded, Attorney General Bondi addressed the assembled FBI leadership with the gravity of someone who understood they were facing the most serious terrorist threat to American civilians since the September 11th attacks. Ladies and gentlemen, we have discovered that Iranian terror cells have positioned themselves within America's major cities with immediate capability to execute coordinated mass casualty attacks that could fundamentally alter American society. This represents the most serious terrorist threat we have ever encountered within our borders. She looked around the room at each special agent in charge and senior FBI official. Over the next 48 hours, we will be executing the most critical counter-terrorism operation in American history. The safety and security of millions of American civilians depends on our success in neutralizing these Iranian terror cells before they can execute their planned attacks. The FBI leadership understood they had just received intelligence that would require them to execute the most complex and critical counterterrorism operation in the Bureau's history. The revelation that Iranian terror cells had achieved operational capability within America's major cities represented an existential threat that demanded immediate and decisive response. As the officials dispersed to begin implementing Operation City Shield, Attorney General Pam Bondi remained behind to coordinate with FBI leadership and counter-terrorism specialists. The discovery of active Iranian terror links within America's major cities had revealed a threat that went beyond traditional terrorism concerns. It represented a coordinated assault on American civilian populations designed to cause mass casualties and social panic. Standing in the FBI's Crisis Command Center, surrounded by displays showing the locations of Iranian terror cells and potential targets throughout American cities, Bondi reflected on the magnitude of what American counter-terrorism forces would need to accomplish to prevent the most devastating terrorist attacks in American history. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps had positioned their most capable terrorist operatives within America's largest cities with the mission of executing coordinated mass casualty attacks that could kill thousands of American civilians and fundamentally disrupt American society. But the Iranian terror cells had finally been discovered, and American counter-terrorism capabilities were mobilizing to neutralize every terrorist threat with overwhelming force and absolute determination. The battle to protect American civilians would require flawless execution and unprecedented coordination between federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies. Within hours of the FBI briefing, Bondi had established a national urban counter-terrorism task force that brought together every major federal law enforcement agency, military special operations units, and local law enforcement organizations from America's major metropolitan areas. The FBI's Washington field office had been expanded to accommodate the largest counterterrorism operation in American history, where counterterrorism specialists, federal agents, military operators, and intelligence analysts worked around the clock to coordinate simultaneous operations against Iranian terror cells across multiple cities. The first critical operational success came from the FBI's New York Joint Terrorism Task Force, where Special Agent Maria Santos had been conducting surveillance on Qasem Hosseini, an Iranian terrorist operative who had been leading the terror cell operations in the New York metropolitan area. Madam Attorney General, Agent Santos reported during the emergency operational briefing, "We have intercepted communications showing that Hosseini has received final authorization from Revolutionary Guard Corps commanders to execute coordinated attacks against subway systems, Times Square and One World Trade Center within the next 18 hours. The possibility that Iranian terrorists were preparing to attack some of America's most iconic civilian targets within hours demanded immediate tactical response to prevent mass casualties. Agent Santos, what's our assessment of the Iranian terror cell's immediate attack capability? Are they prepared to execute their planned attacks immediately? Ma'am, based on our surveillance, the Iranian terror cell has positioned explosives and weapons at multiple locations throughout Manhattan and appears ready to execute coordinated attacks that could cause casualties comparable to the September 11th attacks. Meanwhile, the FBI's Los Angeles Joint Terrorism Task Force had been tracking Iranian terror cell activities on the West Coast, where terrorists had been preparing attacks against multiple high-value civilian and infrastructure targets. Madam Attorney General, reported Special Agent Michael Rodriguez from Los Angeles, Iranian terror cells have positioned explosives near Los Angeles International Airport and the Port of Long Beach, with apparent plans to execute coordinated attacks that would disrupt both air travel and international trade, while causing mass civilian casualties. The possibility that Iranian terrorists could simultaneously attack aviation and shipping infrastructure while targeting civilian populations represented a strategic threat that could disrupt American economic activity for months while causing thousands of casualties. Special Agent Jennifer Walsh from the FBI's Chicago Joint Terrorism Task Force had discovered that Iranian terror cells were preparing to attack transportation infrastructure during peak commuter hours to maximize civilian casualties. Madam Attorney General, Agent Walsh reported during the evening briefing, Iranian terror cells in Chicago have positioned explosives throughout the Chicago Transit Authority system with plans to execute coordinated attacks during Monday morning rush hour that could cause thousands of casualties and paralyze transportation throughout the metropolitan area. The possibility that Iranian terrorists were targeting public transportation systems during peak usage hours represented a mass casualty threat that demanded immediate intervention to protect American civilians. Dr. Lisa Thompson from the Department of Homeland Security's Terrorism Prevention Office had been analyzing the strategic implications of coordinated Iranian terrorist attacks across multiple American cities. Madam Attorney General, if Iranian terror cells succeed in executing coordinated attacks in multiple cities simultaneously, we could be looking at casualty levels and economic disruption that exceeds the September 11th attacks and could fundamentally alter American society and international relations. The strategic implications were staggering. Coordinated Iranian terrorist attacks could potentially cause casualties in the thousands, while demonstrating that foreign terrorist organizations could successfully attack American civilians within their own cities, potentially triggering social panic and political instability that could compromise American national security for years. As intelligence continued to flow in from joint terrorism task forces across the country, the true scope of the Iranian terrorist threat became clearer. This was not just terrorism, it was a coordinated assault on American civilian populations designed to cause mass casualties, social panic, and strategic disruption that could fundamentally alter American society. Standing in the National Urban Counterterrorism Task Force Command Center, surrounded by counterterrorism specialists and federal agents working to prevent the most devastating terrorist attacks in American history, Attorney General Pam Bondi knew that the next 18 hours would determine whether America could successfully protect its civilians against this unprecedented terrorist threat. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps had positioned their most capable terrorist operatives within America's major cities, with immediate capability to execute coordinated mass casualty attacks, but American counter-terrorism forces were ready to engage them with superior intelligence, coordination and determination. Operation City Shield would launch within 12 hours, marking the beginning of the most critical counter-terrorism operations ever conducted on American soil. The outcome would determine whether Iranian terrorists could successfully execute coordinated attacks against American civilians, or whether American law enforcement would decisively defeat this threat to the homeland. Attorney General Pam Bondi was confident that American counter-terrorism capabilities would achieve overwhelming victory and demonstrate to Iran and any other terrorist organization that attacking American civilians would provoke a response that would destroy any terrorist threat to the American people.